Why we must keep Russia on a short leash or history will repeat itself. Some people think Russia is just misunderstood, that Vladimir Putin is a strong leader standing up to the West and the globalists. That maybe, just maybe, he's the good guy. But history doesn't lie. And if we don't keep Russia on a short leash, it will repeat itself again. History doesn't forget. Poland remembers. In 1795, Russia helped erase Poland from the map for over 120 years. In 1939, they invaded again, side by side with Nazi Germany. After World War II, they didn't leave. They replaced one occupation with another, this time with red flags and fake elections for 45 years. Russia doesn't liberate. Russia replaces. It controls. Putinism, modern imperialism. Putin isn't bringing back the Soviet Union. He's mixing Soviet nostalgia with Tsarist pride, orthodoxy, and fear. He jails opponents. He poisons journalists. He bombs his neighbors and blames them for it. Georgia, Crimea, Donbas, Kyiv. These aren't accidents. They're patterns. The West's dangerous amnesia. But in the West, people are falling for it. They see Putin as a strong man, a symbol of tradition, a rebel against global elites. They don't see the tanks in Grozny, the bombs in Mariupol, the lies on Russian propaganda state TV. Or maybe they just don't care. Because it's not their homes being shelled, not their country being erased. Poland knows better. In Poland, we don't have the luxury of forgetting. We know what it's like to live with Russian soldiers on our streets. To lose language, culture, freedom, all under the excuse of protection. We've seen the masks fall before. We know the cost of letting our guard down. We paid for their empire. While Russians marched under red banners, we stood in lines. In Poland and across the Eastern Bloc, the shelves were empty. Food was rationed. Meat was rare. We used food stamps, not just during war, but in so-called peace up to the 1989. Why? Because everything, coal, steel, grain, machinery, was shipped east. To Moscow. To Leningrad. To build the empire. While we waited hours for toilet paper. They called it brotherhood. But we were the younger, poorer brother who did all the work. That's not friendship. That's extraction. How it looked in practice. Massive exports to the USSR, often under fake names or categories. Poland was required to send large quantities of goods to the USSR, often below market value, or labeled misleadingly to make the numbers look balanced. Some products were labeled as for internal use or classified as industrial parts, but in reality were finished consumer goods. Furniture, food, electronics, machinery, even coal. Polish factories produced excess military equipment, locomotives, ship components, buses like the Yelch, and consumer goods, a significant portion of which was sent east. Example: it's widely known that Polish ham, chocolate shoes, and vodka were exported en masse, while Poles at home couldn't buy them due to empty shelves or rationing. Luxury goods and even meat were produced in Poland, but most of it was shipped to the Soviet Union. Meanwhile, at home, ration cards were introduced, at first temporarily, but became a standard feature of daily life by the early 1980s. People had to queue for hours for meat, butter, sugar, shoes, gasoline, and even toilet paper. Some items were available under the counter, only to party officials or the connected. Black markets thrived, as did bribes and favors for better access. Puwex, freedom behind the glass. While most Poles stood in line for vinegar, soap, or shoes made of cardboard, there was another world. A world where Coca-Cola was cold, jeans were real, and Western music played from cassette decks. That world was called Puwex. It stood like a showroom of capitalism, right in the middle of a socialist reality. But there was a catch. You couldn't pay with zloty.
Only dollars.
Dollars sent by relatives from the West, or bought unofficially under the table at much higher rates. For many, walking into Puex wasn't just about getting a better soap or real chocolate. It was a brief escape, a look through the glass at the life they were told not to want, but secretly did. The regime allowed it, because it needed those dollars. And so Puex became the most honest store in the country. Prices didn't change. No ration cards. No tricks. Just the truth in packaging from the West. The paradox. While Poland was overproducing and shipping goods abroad, particularly to the USSR, the Polish people lived in scarcity. Many saw it as Poland works, Moscow eats. Political background. This was part of the Comecon system, Council for Mutual Economic Assistance, where the USSR basically orchestrated trade to benefit itself. Poland had to meet quotas, even if it meant running out of stock domestically, and the resentment grew. This situation played a major role in the rise of social unrest. Strikes in 1970, 1976, and 1980 weren't just about politics. They were about living conditions. Movements like Solidarity drew strength from this very contradiction. People were told they were building socialism, but they couldn't buy basic food while their work fed another empire. Our leaders, their puppets. And who kept us in line? Not always Soviet soldiers. Sometimes our own people. Prime ministers, generals, union bosses. Many of them worked with the KGB, signed papers, spied on students, betrayed friends. The Iron Curtain didn't fall from the sky. It was held up by collaborators. These weren't patriots. They weren't neutral. They were the gatekeepers of our own oppression, and their shadows still linger in today's politics. Why this matters now? This isn't ancient history. You can't understand today's Europe without this past. Russia hasn't changed, they just updated its lies. And many of the people who held the leash back then are now letting go of it. Some do it for profit, others for ideology. But we remember. We speak. Because silence is collaboration. Conclusion and call to action. This isn't about hate. It's about memory. It's about survival. Russia must be watched. Its propaganda challenged. Its actions punished. Because when you let your guard down, Russia doesn't hesitate. And those who glorify Putin, they don't understand what happens when that leash snaps. Don't ignore history. Share the truth. Follow for more truth about power, politics, and propaganda.